So what lenses should you have in your bag? Today, that's what we're going to talk about. I'm Bill, half of Disney Image Makers, and along with Eric Weber, we make videos about all things photography, gear reviews, shooting tutorials, editing tutorials, as well as our opinions. And that's what this video is going to be. It's going to be my opinion on the lenses you should have in your bag, and I'm going to show you examples of each one of these lenses. I went into New York City the other day. We started in Brooklyn, and then we headed into Manhattan a little bit later on. My daughters wanted to go down under the Brooklyn Bridge and, just take some iPhone pictures and like Instagram photos. So I said, all right, I'm going to take my entire camera bag and I'm going to shoot with all of my lenses in different situations. So I'm going to go through some of the images and some of the things that we shot that night. But let's jump into Brooklyn.
Hello everybody. We're in NYC.
So we're in New York City, and I had no idea what I was going to shoot this week for a video. So where did you say you wanted to go? Dumbo. So that's down under the Brooklyn Manhattan Bridge overpass. And I've done other videos here, so we're going to do that tonight. We're going to go down here, and with my Nikon camera, I'm going to shoot through my entire bag. Every lens I have, different situations, and I'll see what I get. Sometimes you just don't have a great idea for a video, so tonight we're just going to shoot, and you guys get to come along. All right, so I'm going to get the bag out and get started.
Wait, turn it around.
Turn it around?
Yeah.
Wait, you want to turn it around?
Look that way. Show them the view.
First lens we're going to use is the 70 to 200. Take some pictures of the girls out here. It's a great walk-around lens, and it's just great for like street photography and plucking little pieces out of the cityscape. So I started out with the 70 to 200, which is probably one of my favorites. It's great for shooting portraits, and as you can see by these images, it gives you a nice soft out of focus background, and if the sun's setting and the time is right, you can get some really cool like blown out golden hour type photos, and it's just a great lens to use. It's stabilized. The one I have is anyway. I have a Tamron 70 to 200, but this focal length, you could even be using a crop sensor camera with like the 55 to 200 lens that you have on there, or any number of lenses that's going to give you a telephoto view. The 2.8 aperture is great because it's going to really give you a shallow depth of field, but any telephoto lens, when you zoom it in, you can actually get some compression and create a out of focus background, even if you're not able to set your aperture to f2.8. So after we shot around with that lens, we went around by, there's this, it's almost like they've built up this area down underneath the Brooklyn Bridge and the Manhattan Bridge. There's a park there. So I got my mask on like I'm supposed to. The 70 to 200 is just, to me, it's just the best portrait lens. Got some pictures of the kids. It's just, I don't know, there's nothing like it. I love this lens. I love how you can zoom in and out, how quickly you can make adjustments, and the images are just beautiful. Just a really great lens. The area is called Dumbo, and they have old warehouses there that they've converted into lofts and shopping, and we found these archways. All right, so the next lens I'm going to use is my 35 millimeter f2. Small, compact on the camera, and we're over here by what was an old warehouse, and I'm going to put the kids in an archway and try to get an image of that. I thought would be cool for a picture. The kids wanted to jump in the archways, and I was going to take some pictures of them. For this, I used my 35 millimeter lens, and it's a great little lens to have in your bag. It's a prime. It's got an f2 aperture, so it opens up nice and wide, creates a nice shallow depth of field, and it's compact and easy to carry around. So if I'm just going out with my camera and one lens, 35 millimeter on a full frame camera is a nice, regular field of view. This is the lens I'll grab and go with. Now, there are many versions of this lens, so I'm using the Canon M50 to shoot this video. For this camera, the 22 millimeter f2 is the same equivalent. And there are other equivalents for different camera systems, but it's basically a 35 millimeter with a wide aperture. It's a great walk around lens, and if you're going out for the day and you want to get images like this, it's just a perfect walk around lens. You can use it in most situations, and especially when you're a little challenged, if it's starting to get dark out or whatever, you can open it up nice and wide. I'm going to take some pictures of the kids with the flash by the waterside here. I'm going to go to the 28 to 70. Good lens, 24 to 70. Should work out well. I have the 24 to 70 on the camera now, And we were doing some shooting here with the city skyline behind us. And the thing about this is the sun had already set. The sky was this beautiful color. It was a pink and blue hue. And I wanted to take a picture of my family in front of the city. So there's only one way to do this without the image being totally black in the front, and that is to bring light into the image. So I used a flash. Now, rookie move here. I had my speed light with me, and of course, after one shot, the batteries died. You know, you try to balance out the background and the foreground, and that's where the flash comes in. I probably should have had a diffuser with me of some sort, but I don't have one. So, but I think it's still better than without it. Now that is a rookie move, but luckily my D750 has a pop-up flash. So this image I was able to take with the pop-up flash. Now it's not perfect, but in a pinch, it does the job. So to show you what this same image looks like with no flash, here's this. So as you can see, you really need to throw some light onto it. Now, if you put your camera in aperture priority or any of the, semi-manual modes, the camera's going to try to balance out the scene, and you're going to end up with like a washed out background. You're not going to get those vivid colors and those deep contrasty colors in the sky. So what you have to do is you have to shoot in manual mode and expose for the sky. So that's what I did. On the first shot where I didn't use the flash, that was a test shot just to get the sky the way I wanted it. And then I threw fill light in on us when I took the picture. And this is a great way to really create a beautiful image, especially when you have colors in the sky like this. A lot of times the camera will either throw too much flash or it'll illuminate, the subjects in front, but the background will be too dark and you won't be able to see the sky. So when you take control of the camera and in manual mode, set your exposure. And I did this I was shooting at ISO, I think about 400 here. And I had my aperture wide open at f2.8 on the 24-70 lens, but just use your widest aperture on whatever lens you're using. And then I think I was at probably about 24 millimeters. It was almost as wide as I could get it. And that's how I got the shot. I mean, it was really great. And then when I went into Lightroom, I was able to brighten it up and then, touch up some things. But the basic image was captured, correctly with the exposure from the flash. So that's something you want to think about when you're shooting in these types of situations. But the 24-70 is a great lens for just all-around shooting, creating depth of field. It has some telephoto, but it's also wide enough to shoot a wide landscape like this with a group of people in it. It's just a go-to lens that I think every photographer should have in their bag. Okay, so then we went into Manhattan, and we drove down by the Freedom Tower first. And I have to say, this is during May of 2020, during the coronavirus pandemic. And, I've been a lifelong New Yorker, and I go into the city all the time. And the lower Manhattan, where the, Freedom Tower is and where the Trade Center used to be, was a ghost town. There was nobody there. So I was able to just get out of the car, set up a couple of shots like this. I used my 16 to 35 millimeter f4 Nikon lens for this. And it's a great lens because it lets you get wide enough. You can zoom in if you want to. So that was a really nice lens for this. And I grabbed a couple of shots there, and then the kids wanted to go to Times Square. So we're here in Manhattan now. And I've switched to my 16 to 35 millimeter lens, but the city's pretty quiet, right?
Very quiet, very unusual.
Yeah, this is not what Manhattan is usually like, especially on a holiday weekend. It's Memorial Day weekend.
And it's 65 degrees out.
Yeah, it's a beautiful night. This would usually pack with people, cars. Wouldn't be able to move around here. There are no tourists in the city right now. Very strange. So we're going to head into Times Square now and check that out. So we drove all the way down there, and I've never moved so freely in Manhattan. There were cars, but it wasn't a lot of cars, and you can move wherever you wanted. I parked down the street from Times Square, which is unheard of. We actually parked right near Radio City Music Hall. So the kids wanted to go over by Radio City Music Hall. And my daughter's a graduating senior this year, so I was able to grab this image where they had on the marquee, congratulations to the graduates of 2020. And that was a kind of cool little thing that we didn't expect. But here again, I used the 16 to 35 f4. Now here, with landscape shots, I shot this at, I think, f8 or f11. It doesn't matter. What I want to do is get a long exposure because there were cars going by every now and then, and I happened to catch one going through the shot. And actually, I stopped down a little bit more than that now that I remember because I wanted to get the starburst in the lights. And if you look in the top left corner there, that one street light's kind of bursting. And when you close down your aperture, it creates that kind of a look. So that lens is great for these types of images. Then we backed off from being right in front of Radio City, and I went across the street. And I mean, look at this. I took a little video clip of this, of how empty everything was. I mean, just, it's unheard of. And that's where the Tonight Show shot, right there at 30 Rock. And then I took a shot from here. It was more of a wide shot. And here I waited for some cars to come through so I can get the light trails. Always makes it a little more interesting. And this is only maybe a 3 or 4 second exposure, but it was enough to get the car going through. These are all single shots. They're not HDRs. You know, there were a couple of images where I did shoot HDRs. And, you know, there's a reason for that. When I went into Times Square, we went down into the actual, you know, right down into Times Square. And here I actually used the 16 to 24 and I took a couple of HDRs. Now, why would you want to use an HDR? What is an HDR? It's basically a bunch of different exposures of the same exact image. I didn't move my camera on the tripod, and I created a dark one, a little lighter, and then a bright one. And because the lights are so bright in Times Square and the balance is so off, I mean, the marquees are so bright, you create, you know, a really, really low exposure image where all of that is exposed properly. And then you create exposures where the signs are all blown out, but the lower half of the image where it's a little darker is exposed properly. And then you blend them together in Lightroom. It's a couple of, you know, clicks of the mouse and they blend together and it puts it together and you get an image like this, which is a cool looking image. You know, it balances everything out and you get this really cool look. Are you guys liking these fireside chats? You know, I'm out in the RV again. It's the quietest place in my house right now, so I'm actually enjoying shooting out here. And, you know, I got the little fake fireplace here to give me some ambiance. Next, I took out one of my favorite lenses, one of the lenses I've owned the longest out of any lens I have, and it's my Rokinon 8mm fisheye. A very quiet Times Square. Not much going on. There's still a lot of people out here, but not like it would be. We're wearing our masks like we should. Just a very strange vibe in New York City. And this is a lens that I pull out in all sorts of different situations, and it gives you some really cool images. Now here, I did the same thing. I had to balance the exposures, so I took, I think, 4 or 5 images here, different exposures, and then I blended them together in Lightroom. But the fisheye gives you a very cool perspective. It bends the buildings, and it gives you this really cool look. So a fisheye lens is something that I think you should have in your bag, as is the 16 to 35 for any type of landscape shooting. That's your go-to lens for landscape shooting. And the fisheye is a fun lens to have. And you can use it in all different ways. I mean, I've used it with people, you use it in landscapes. There's all different ways you can use a fisheye. So we were heading back to the car. It was the end of the night. You know, we were tired, walking around a little bit. We actually felt a little uncomfortable in the city. Not because we were afraid we were going to get sick. It just didn't feel right. You know, Times Square is basically a tourist destination, and there were no people there really because there were no tourists in New York. You know, regular New Yorkers don't really spend much time in Times Square. It's, you know, it's for visitors. And it was a very strange feeling. That place is usually wall-to-wall people. You can't walk down the sidewalk without being shoulder to shoulder with people. So it was a very odd feeling. So we were walking back to the car, and I said, let's do one more fisheye shot, and we set this one up. Now, this was a cool shot. I put the tripod low. I turned the camera straight up. Again, I set my exposure for, you know, what I thought would be a good exposure to get the sky and the buildings around me. And then all 4 of us just kind of leaned over the camera. And I thought it was a cool picture, a cool, fun family image. And then when I got it back into the computer in Lightroom, I brightened it up a little bit. And I always like to underexpose my images so that I have room to make them brighter. I always find it's easier to make them brighter than to bring overexposed images down. So that's what I like to do. So that was my night in the city. I say to myself every week, okay, what's a video idea for this week? And the girls wanted to go in there, so I said, all right, we'll take a ride. And I hope this gives you an idea of the kind of images you can create with certain focal length images. Got to see what New York looks like at this time of the year, you know, going through what we're all going through. It's definitely a different place right now. And, you know, but it was an interesting night and a fun night, and hopefully you guys enjoyed coming along for the ride. Okay, we have a couple of other New York City videos that we've taken, and I'm going to drop them here. I'm not really sure which one's which, but they're both going to pop up here. I have one where Eric and I went down into this Dumbo area again, and we were shooting around, and I was in there a couple of weeks ago looking over the 11 to 22 Canon M series lens, so maybe I'll put that one here. Okay, see you in the next video.